The Galactic Council had kept peace among the stars for 12,000 cycles. 300 different species lived together under its laws. They traded goods and shared knowledge and resolved their disputes with words instead of weapons. The Council believed they had seen everything the universe had to offer. They were wrong. Deep in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy, there was a small yellow star with 8 planets circling around it. The third planet from this star was covered in blue water and green land. The beings who lived there called it Earth. The Council's scientists had a different name for it. They called it a Class 12. Ambassador Al of the collective was the one who volunteered to make first contact with the new species. There were creatures with 6 legs and large compound eyes. They came from a paradise world where the weather was always mild, and the most dangerous animal was no bigger than a small dog. Had made first contact with 11 species before. He considered himself an expert in the field. His ship detected the human vessel 3 days before the actual meeting. The humans were traveling in a crude metal box powered by nuclear engines. Al found it almost charming how primitive they were. He prepared his standard greeting protocols and practiced his speech about the wonders of galactic civilization. Captain Jake was the commander of the human ship called Starbound Hope. He was 52 years old with eyes and hair that was starting to turn white at the temples. He had served in his planet's navy for 20 years before joining the space exploration program. His first officer was Commander Amy Price, a woman with short brown hair and a sharp mind for tactics. They had been traveling for 6 months when their sensors picked up the alien vessel. The crew of the Starbound Hope had trained for this moment their entire careers. First contact with alien life was the dream that had driven humanity to the stars. Jake felt his heart beating fast as he ordered his communications officer to open a channel. Lieutenant Ben Carter was the youngest member of the bridge crew. He was 28 years old and had joined the mission because he believed humanity's future lay among the stars. His hands trembled slightly as he established the connection with the alien ship. The first few hours of communication were spent establishing a basic translation protocol. They had technology that could learn new languages quickly. By the end of the first day, Ambassador Al and Captain could speak to each other with reasonable clarity. Al was surprised by the humans. They were soft-bodied creatures with only 2 legs and 2 arms. They had flat faces with small eyes positioned at the front of their heads. When they expressed happiness, they pulled back their lips to reveal white bones inside their mouths. Al found this gesture disturbing but tried not to show it. The negotiations began on the second day. Al explained the structure of the Galactic Council and the benefits of membership. He spoke of trade opportunities and technological exchanges. He painted a picture of a peaceful galaxy where all species worked together for common good. Captain listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. He wanted to know about other species and their histories. He wanted to understand the laws that governed galactic society. He seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of humanity joining a larger community. Al grew confident. These humans were clearly a young and impressionable species. They would be easy to guide and control. The collective would gain significant influence by sponsoring their membership in the council. On the third day, Al made his mistake. Among the and many other council species, it was customary to establish dominance when dealing with younger civilizations. This was done through a display of superior technology and firepower. The younger species would recognize their place in the hierarchy and become more cooperative as a result. Al had performed this ritual many times before. He ordered his ship to power up its weapons array. Targeting lasers painted the hull of the Starbound Hope. Warning lights flashed on the human vessel as their sensors detected the threat. Al transmitted a message explaining that this was simply a demonstration of capabilities. He expected the humans to become nervous and submissive. He expected them to recognize the power of their new potential allies. Captain Jake did not become nervous. He did not become submissive. He stood very still on his bridge and watched the tactical display with those strange eyes. His crew looked at him and waited for orders. Commander Amy Price moved to stand beside her captain. She had known Jake for 15 years. She had seen him face pirates and storms and mechanical failures that would have broken lesser men. She knew that look in his eyes. "Sir," she said quietly, "what are your orders?" Jake turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Ben Carter had already begun calculating firing solutions. His hands were no longer trembling. "Return the gesture," the captain said. The Starward Hope was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel designed for long journeys through unknown space. But humanity had learned long ago that the universe was dangerous. Even their peaceful ships carried weapons. The humans did not have targeting lasers. They had something else entirely. The engineering team had adapted mining equipment into a weapon system that could cut through asteroids. They had never tested it against another ship. Lieutenant Carter fired a single shot at a small moon that was drifting nearby. The beam of energy crossed the distance in less than a second. The moon, which was roughly 50 kilometers in diameter, ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment there was only an expanding cloud of dust and rubble. The bridge of the ship fell silent. Ambassador Al stared at his display screens with all four of his eyes. His translator device picked up the rapid clicking sounds he was making, but could not convert them into any known language. He was beyond words. Captain opened a communication channel. His voice was calm and polite. "Ambassador," he said, "I hope that demonstration was sufficient. Now perhaps we can return to discussing trade agreements." Immediately transmitted a surrender signal and requested emergency diplomatic protocols. He had never used these protocols before. In 11 first contact missions, he had never encountered a species that made him fear for his life. The ambassador spent the entire journey back to Council Space writing his report. He described the humans in detail. He described their weapons and their strange calmness under threat. He described the way their captain had ordered the destruction of a moon with the same tone another being might use to order a cup of tea. When Al finished his report, he added a personal recommendation at the end. He suggested that the Galactic Council classify the human as a restricted zone. He suggested that no species should make contact with humanity without extensive preparation and extreme caution. He also suggested that no one should ever point a weapon at a human unless they were prepared to die. The Galactic Council received his report and called an emergency session. It was the first emergency session in over 2,000 cycles. The Age of Peace was about to become much more complicated. The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council could hold 10,000 beings at once. It was a massive dome of crystal and metal that floated in the void between 3 star systems. Representatives from hundreds of species filled its seats as the emergency session began. The air was thick with tension and fear. High Counselor N presided over the assembly from her elevated platform. She was an ancient being made of living crystal that had grown slowly over thousands of years. Light passed through her body and scattered into rainbow patterns on the walls. She had led the council for 300 cycles and had never seen her colleagues so afraid. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness. Earth. The word had spread through galactic communication networks within days of Ambassador Al's report. Everyone wanted to know about the new species that had casually destroyed a moon during first contact. Dr. Laura arrived at the council chamber with a small diplomatic team. She was 63 years old with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen much of human history. Before becoming Earth's ambassador, she had been a professor who studied languages and communication. The council had asked for someone who could speak well and remain calm under pressure. Laura was perfect for the job. Her aide was a young man named Sam Cooper. He was 25 years old and had been trained in alien protocols for only 3 weeks before the mission. He walked beside the ambassador with wide eyes, trying to take in the impossible variety of alien life that surrounded them. There were beings made of gas and beings made of stone. There were creatures with dozens of limbs and creatures with none at all. Sam felt very small and very human. The council's chief was called. He was a serpentine creature with scales that shifted color depending on his mood. His species had studied other life forms for. When he took the speaking platform, his scales were a deep shade of purple that indicated extreme concern. Began his presentation with basic facts about Earth. He showed images of the planet's surface, its oceans and continents and swirling clouds. The assembled representatives watched with growing unease as he explained what made this world so dangerous. Earth's gravity was crushing compared to most inhabited planets. The average council species came from worlds where movement was easy and gentle. Humans had evolved under a force that pressed down on them constantly. Their bones were dense, and their muscles were strong because weakness meant death. The planet's atmosphere was filled with a gas called oxygen. Explained that oxygen was highly reactive and corrosive. Most species would suffer severe chemical burns if exposed to it. Humans breathed this poison every moment of their lives. Their bodies had adapted to use it as fuel. But the most shocking revelation was the water. Earth was covered in a substance that would dissolve the cellular structure of most known life forms. Humans not only survived contact with this liquid but required it to live. They drank it. They bathed in it. They swam through vast oceans of it for recreation. The chamber grew quieter and quieter as continued his presentation. He showed images of Earth's wildlife, predators with massive teeth and claws, venomous creatures that could kill with a single bite, microscopic organisms that waged constant war inside every living body. The planet was a death trap from surface to core. And then began to speak about human history. The humans had not achieved their dominance through peace. They had fought their way to the top of their planet's food chain through millions of years of brutal competition. They had developed weapons and strategies and tactics that let them overcome every obstacle their world had thrown at them. Even after becoming the dominant species on Earth, the humans had not stopped fighting. They turned their weapons on each other. War after war had swept across their planet throughout their history. They had developed increasingly powerful methods of destruction, always finding new ways to kill their own kind. Displayed images of human weapons, simple clubs and spears from their early history, swords and arrows from their Middle Ages, guns and bombs from their industrial era, and finally, the weapons they had created in their modern age. The nuclear bomb appeared on the display screen, explained what it could do. A single device could destroy an entire city and poison the surrounding land for generations. The humans had built thousands of these weapons. They had pointed them at each other across their planet for decades. The most disturbing fact was when these weapons had been developed. Humans had created devices capable of ending all life on their planet before they had even reached their own moon. They had mastered the art of destruction long before they had learned to travel among the stars. The chamber was completely silent when delivered his final conclusion. He stated that humans were the most dangerous species the Council had ever encountered. They were stronger and faster and more resilient than almost any other known life form. They had spent their entire existence learning how to fight and kill and survive against impossible odds. And most importantly, they did not even realize how exceptional they were. To humans, their violent history and deadly capabilities were simply normal. High Counselor N thanked for his report and turned to face the human delegation. Every eye in the chamber focused on Ambassador Laura. Many of the representatives were seeing a human in person for the first time. Laura rose from her seat and walked to the speaking platform with calm dignity. Sam Cooper watched her go and felt proud to serve such a composed leader. The ambassador looked out at the thousands of alien faces watching her with fear and curiosity. "We come in peace," she said. Her voice was soft but carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "We have always hoped we were not alone in the universe. We have looked up at the stars for thousands of years and wondered if there were others out there who might become our friends." She smiled warmly at the assembly. High Counselor N noted that the expression revealed rows of white teeth, teeth that were clearly designed for tearing flesh from bone. "We understand that our history may seem violent to you," Ambassador continued. "We do not deny the wars we have fought among ourselves, but we have also learned from those wars. We have built societies based on cooperation and law. We have created art and music and literature that celebrate the best parts of our nature." She paused and looked around the chamber with those kind eyes that had witnessed so much human triumph and tragedy. "We are not here to conquer or dominate. We are here to learn and to share and to grow alongside all of you. We hope you will give us the chance to prove that humanity can be a force for good in this galaxy." The assembly did not know how to respond. Many of the representatives wanted to believe her words, but they could not forget the images had shown them. They could not forget the moon that had been vaporized without warning or hesitation. High Counselor N called for a recess to allow the various delegations to discuss the situation. As the chamber emptied, she remained on her platform and watched the human ambassador walk away with her small team. The ancient crystal being had lived for thousands of years. She had seen species rise and fall. She had witnessed wars and plagues and disasters of every kind, but she had never felt the particular sensation that filled her now as she watched Laura disappear through the chamber doors. For the first time in her long existence, High Counselor N was truly afraid of another species, and she was wise enough to know that this fear was entirely justified. 50 cycles passed after humanity joined the Galactic Council. The fears that had gripped the assembly during those first meetings began to fade. Humans proved themselves to be friendly neighbors who were eager to trade and learn and explore. They established colonies on distant worlds and built relationships with dozens of species. Many council members started to believe that the initial concerns about had been exaggerated. The Empire watched these developments with cold reptilian eyes. They were a proud species of scaled warriors who had conquered 17 worlds through military force. Their empire stretched across a significant portion of the galactic arm. They had joined the Council only to avoid facing a unified coalition against them. The laws of galactic peace frustrated them deeply. They believed that the strong had a right to take from the weak. When scouts discovered that humans had established a small mining colony at the edge of Council space, the Empire's leaders saw an opportunity. The colony was far from Earth and far from any significant military presence. It would be easy to capture and hold. And once they controlled human colonists as hostages, they could negotiate from a position of strength. The colony was called New Haven. It sat on a resource-rich moon orbiting a gas giant in an unclaimed system. 12,000 humans lived there, mostly miners and engineers who had come seeking opportunity on the frontier. They had built their homes in domed habitats that dotted the surface like bubbles of life in an ocean of rock. Kate was the colony's administrator. She was 45 years old with red hair that was starting to show streaks of. She had left Earth 20 years ago to build a new life among the stars. Her husband Greg managed the mining operations that kept the colony profitable. Their daughter was 12 years old and attended the settlement's only school with 60 other children. Life on New Haven was hard but good. The colonists worked long shifts in the mines and spent their free time building a community. They had established parks and restaurants and recreational facilities. They celebrated holidays and birthdays and weddings. They were building a future for themselves and their children. None of them expected what was coming. The fleet arrived without warning on a quiet morning. 20 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took positions around the moon. Their commander, a veteran named, broadcast a simple message to the colony below. Surrender or die. Kate received the transmission in her office. She read the words 3 times to make sure she understood them correctly. Then she activated the colony's emergency protocols and called an assembly of all department heads. The meeting was brief. The colonists had no warships and no military training. They were miners and engineers and teachers and doctors. The fleet could reduce their domes to rubble within minutes. Logic demanded surrender. But Kate was human, and humans had a long history of doing illogical things when their homes were threatened. She sent a response to the commander. The message was polite but firm. New Haven was a peaceful colony that posed no threat to anyone. The colonists had no quarrel with the Empire. She requested time to contact Earth and arrange for diplomatic negotiations. Commander laughed when he received her response. He had studied reports about human capabilities and believed them to be exaggerated. These were not soldiers but workers. They would break easily once his troops landed. The first wave of soldiers touched down near the main habitat dome. They expected frightened civilians who would cower before their weapons and armor. They found something very different. Greg had organized the miners into defensive teams. These men and women had spent years operating heavy equipment in dangerous conditions. They knew every tunnel and shaft in the colony's underground network, and they had access to tools that could cut through solid rock. The drilling lasers were designed to bore through dense ore deposits. They were not weapons by any official definition. But when a soldier stepped around a corner and took a mining laser beam through his chest plate, the distinction became meaningless. The first assault team was wiped out within an hour. Commander received reports of his soldiers dying in ambushes and traps throughout the colony's tunnel system. The humans were fighting with industrial equipment and improvised explosives. They were dying too, but they were taking far more with them. Kate coordinated the defense from the colony's central hub. She had set up a command center with communication links to every sector. She tracked movements and directed her people to defensive positions. She had never commanded troops in combat, but she had managed complex mining operations for 15 years. The skills were more similar than anyone might have expected. Her daughter had been evacuated to a deep shelter with the other children. Kate tried not to think about what would happen if the broke through. She focused on the task at hand: fight, survive, buy time. The colonists sent a distress signal to Earth on the first day of the attack. The message was simple and direct: "We are under attack. Send help." Kate knew that help was weeks away at best. The colony would have to hold on its own until then. She looked at the faces of her people as they prepared to defend their home. Miners and engineers and teachers, ordinary humans who had never expected to fight a war. But they were still humans, they were still. The battle for New Haven continued for 6 days. They sent wave after wave of soldiers into the tunnels. Each assault cost them more casualties than the last. Commander grew increasingly frustrated. He had expected a quick conquest that would bring glory to his name. Instead, he was losing troops to workers armed with mining equipment. On the 4th day, he ordered his ships to begin bombarding the colony from orbit. The strategy was simple and brutal. If the humans would not surrender, he would bury them under rubble. Kate watched the first bombardment strike from her command center. The dome above her cracked but held. The colony's engineers had built well. She sent out repair teams and continued coordinating the defense. By the 6th day, New Haven was battered but unbroken. They had taken control of some surface installations, but could not penetrate the deep tunnels where most colonists had retreated. Commander had lost over 3,000 soldiers. His fleet was running low on ammunition for orbital strikes. The humans had lost 800 people. Each death was a tragedy that Kate carried in her heart, but the colony still stood. The children were still safe in the deep shelters. The defenders were still fighting. And then the sensors detected a massive fleet, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The humans had arrived. Kate received a transmission from the incoming ships. The voice on the other end was calm and professional. New Haven Colony, this is Admiral Chris Palmer of the Earth Defense Fleet. Hold your positions. We are coming to bring you home. Kate felt tears streaming down her face as she relayed the message to her people. They had held on long enough. Help had finally arrived. Commander stared at his tactical display as 200 human warships entered the system in perfect formation. His 20 vessels suddenly seemed very small and very alone. He had made a terrible mistake, and he was about to learn exactly how terrible. The Galactic Council had observation drones stationed throughout known space. These tiny machines recorded events and transmitted data back to the central archives. When the human fleet arrived at New Haven, 17 drones captured every moment of what followed. Admiral Chris Palmer had spent his entire career preparing for a day he hoped would never come. He was 60 years old with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too much of human history. Before joining the space program, he had commanded naval forces on Earth during the last great conflict between nations. He understood war in ways that few humans ever had to learn. The distress call from New Haven had reached Earth 9 days before the fleet departed. In that time, Admiral Palmer had activated protocols that existed only in classified files. Ships emerged from hidden bases throughout human space, vessels that had been constructed in secret for decades, a fleet designed with every lesson humanity had learned from of warfare. Captain commanded the tactical operations from her station on the flagship Valley Forge. She was 42 years old with sharp features and a mind that could process battlefield information faster than most computers. Her job was to coordinate the movements of 200 ships as a single fighting force. Lieutenant Park handled communications for the fleet. He was the link between Admiral Palmer and every vessel under his command. He was also responsible for broadcasting on open channels so that any observers could witness what was about to happen. Admiral Palmer had given specific orders about those broadcasts. He wanted the galaxy to see everything. He wanted witnesses. The fleet formed a defensive formation around New Haven as the human ships approached. Commander sent a transmission demanding that the humans withdraw. He claimed the colony as territory by right of conquest. He threatened to destroy the remaining colonists if the human fleet did not retreat immediately. Admiral Palmer listened to the transmission without expression. When it ended, he turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships," he said, "and make sure they can hear this." Lieutenant Park activated the fleet-wide broadcast. The Admiral's voice carried to every vessel in the system. "All ships, this is Admiral Palmer. Weapons free. Show them what we are." The battle began. Human fighters launched from carrier bays like swarms of angry insects. They were small and fast, and piloted by men and women who had trained for years in gravitational forces that would kill most species. They dove toward the fleet with acceleration that belief. The gunners tried to track the incoming fighters. They were accustomed to enemies who flew in straight lines and predictable patterns. Human pilots did not fly that way. They twisted and rolled and changed direction with movements that seemed impossible. Their bodies could handle the strain because they had evolved on a world where gravity pressed down on them every moment of their lives. The first destroyer exploded within minutes of the battle's start. Human missiles had penetrated its shields and found the reactor core. The ship broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Commander ordered his fleet to concentrate fire on the human flagship. The Valley Forge was the largest ship in the human formation. Surely destroying it would break the enemy's morale. The Valley Forge absorbed the incoming fire with shields that had been designed to withstand the energy output of a small star. Admiral Palmer stood on his bridge and watched the tactical display without flinching. His ship shuddered under the assault but held firm. "Return fire," he said calmly. The Valley Forge carried weapons that they had never seen. The main cannon drew power directly from the ship's reactor and converted it into a focused beam of destructive energy. When it fired, the beam crossed the distance between ships in less than a heartbeat. 3 vessels ceased to exist. They did not explode or break apart. They simply vanished as the beam passed through them. One moment they were there. The next moment they were atoms scattered across the void. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human Marines boarded ships that had been disabled by precision strikes. These soldiers wore powered armor that enhanced their already formidable strength and speed. They fought in corridors and engine rooms with weapons and bare hands alike. They were proud warriors who had conquered 17 worlds. They had never faced an enemy like this. The humans moved through their ships with terrifying efficiency. They did not hesitate or show fear. They killed with a professionalism that spoke of generations of martial experience. One soldier survived to describe the boarding action later. He spoke of a human woman who had taken a blade wound to her arm and continued fighting without pause. She had killed 3 with her bare hands before her squad could reach her position. When asked later about the injury, she had simply shrugged and said it was not that bad. They did not understand. How could any species treat such wounds so casually? How could they fight with such disregard for their own safety? They did not understand because they had never lived on a. They had never evolved in an environment where every day was a battle for survival. They had never learned that pain was just information, and that death was just another obstacle to overcome. By the end of the 4th hour, the fleet had been reduced to debris. Only Commander's flagship remained, its engines disabled and its weapons destroyed. The commander knelt on his bridge among the bodies of his crew and waited for the humans to come for him. Admiral Palmer did not board the enemy flagship. He sent a simple transmission instead. "Commander, you will return to your empire and deliver a message. You attacked a peaceful human colony without provocation. You killed 800 of our people, women and children among them." The admiral paused. When he spoke again, his voice was cold as the void between stars. "Return our dead. This matter is not concluded." The human fleet allowed the flagship to limp away. They watched it disappear into faster-than-light travel before turning their attention to the colony below. Admiral Palmer personally led the relief mission to New Haven's surface. He walked through tunnels that still showed signs of battle. He saw the makeshift weapons and improvised defenses that ordinary colonists had used to hold off a professional military force for 6 days. Kate met him at the central hub. She was exhausted and covered in dust and looked like she had not slept since the attack began. But she stood tall and met his eyes without flinching. "Admiral," she said, "thank you for coming." Admiral Palmer looked at this woman who had led miners and engineers against an invasion fleet. He thought about the reports he had received during the journey. 12,000 civilians holding out against overwhelming odds, fighting with tools designed for digging rocks. "Administrator," he said, "thank you for holding the line." The Galactic Council drones had recorded everything. The footage spread through communication networks within hours. Species across the galaxy watched the Battle of New Haven with growing horror. They saw the human fleet destroy 20 warships in 4 hours. They saw human Marines board enemy vessels and fight with brutal efficiency. They saw a species that had hidden its true military capabilities now revealed in all its terrible glory. Counselor, the who had written the original report on human danger, watched the footage in his private quarters. His scales shifted through colors that had no names in any language. When the recording ended, he sat in silence for a long time. He had warned the council about humans 50 cycles ago. He had told them these were the most dangerous species ever encountered. Now everyone could see that his warnings had been understatements. The galaxy had awoken a sleeping predator, and that predator was very, very angry. The war between humanity and the Empire lasted exactly 3 weeks. In that time, the galaxy learned why should never be provoked. Admiral Palmer did not wait for political negotiations or diplomatic protocols. The day after the Battle of New Haven, his fleet crossed into space. 200 ships became 300 as reinforcements arrived from Earth and other human colonies. The empire that had conquered 17 worlds found itself facing an enemy unlike anything it had ever encountered. Human strategists had studied warfare for thousands of years. They had developed doctrines and tactics through countless conflicts on there. They understood how to break an enemy's will to fight without destroying civilian populations. They knew how to strike at the foundations of military power while leaving everything else intact. The military command was located on a heavily fortified moon orbiting there. It was protected by defensive platforms and shield generators and enough weapons to repel any conventional assault. They believed it was impregnable. Human special forces infiltrated the installation in a single night. They disabled the shield generators and opened paths for marine assault teams. By morning, the High Command was in human custody, and the military's communication networks were under human control. Admiral Palmer broadcast a message to every world. He spoke calmly and clearly. The war was over. The military had been neutralized. Civilian populations would not be harmed. But the Empire would accept full responsibility for the attack on New Haven and would pay reparations to the families of those who had died. The surrender came 3 days later. The Galactic Council watched these events unfold with a mixture of fear and fascination. They had never seen a war conducted with such precision and restraint. The humans had dismantled an empire in 3 weeks without destroying a single civilian city or massacring a single non-combatant population. Ambassador Laura returned to the council chamber as human forces accepted the formal surrender. She walked to the speaking platform and looked out at the assembled representatives. Many of them would not meet her eyes. "We did not want this war," she said. Her voice was steady but carried a weight of sorrow. "We came to the stars hopping to find friends and allies. We found them in many of you. We are grateful for your friendship and your welcome." She paused and let her gaze sweep across the chamber. "But we also found those who saw our peaceful nature as weakness. Those who believed that because we chose not to fight, we could not fight. The Empire made this mistake. They attacked a colony of miners and farmers and teachers. They killed 800 of our people, including children." The chamber was absolutely silent. Every being present was hanging on her words. "Let this serve as a lesson," Ambassador continued. "Humanity has spent its entire existence learning the art of war. We have fought each other across every terrain our world has to offer. We have developed weapons that could crack planets and strategies that would take other species to comprehend." She smiled then, that same smile that revealed teeth designed for tearing flesh. But there was sadness in it now, and something that might have been regret. "We do not enjoy violence. We have worked hard to move beyond our warlike past. We teach our children that cooperation is better than conflict, and that peace is more valuable than conquest. But we never forget what we are capable of, and we will never allow anyone to threaten our people without consequence." High Counselor N rose from her elevated platform. Her crystalline form caught the light and scattered it across the chamber walls. She had lived for thousands of years and had presided over the council for 3 centuries. She had never felt so uncertain about the future. "Ambassador," she said, "the council has watched the recent conflict with great concern. We have seen capabilities that were not disclosed during humanity's application for membership. Many of our members are frightened." Laura nodded. "I understand. We did not reveal the full extent of our military strength because we did not want to frighten anyone. We hoped it would never be necessary to demonstrate what we could do." "And yet you built these weapons in secret," N said. "You prepared for war even as you spoke of peace." "Yes, the ambassador replied, "because we learned long ago that hopping for peace is not enough. You must be strong enough to defend it. Our history taught us that lesson many times over." The council debated for 7 days. Representatives argued about what to do with humanity. Some wanted restrictions and limitations on human military capabilities. Others pointed out that attempting to restrict the had not worked well for the. In the end, they chose a different path. The protection protocols were established by unanimous vote. The new laws did not restrict species from Class 10 or higher worlds. Instead, they protected them. Any act of war against a civilization would be considered a crime against galactic peace. The offending species would face the full, unrestricted response of the civilization they had attacked. High Counselor N announced the decision to the full assembly. When a young representative asked why the council had chosen to protect rather than restrict them, she offered a response that would be quoted for generations. "We do not protect the," she said. "We protect everyone else from what happens when someone is foolish enough to make them angry." 50 years passed after the establishment of the protection protocols. The galaxy remained at peace. Human colonies spread across the stars. Human traders and explorers and scientists became common sights on stations and planets throughout Council space. Children of many species played together on station promenades. They did not know about the war that had almost consumed the galaxy. They did not know how close their parents and grandparents had come to witnessing the full fury of humanity unleashed. Kate retired from colonial administration and returned to Earth with her husband and daughter. She wrote a book about the siege of New Haven that became required reading in schools across human space. The lesson she wanted to teach was simple. Ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they fought for their homes and families. Admiral Chris Palmer received the highest honors humanity could bestow. He spent his remaining years teaching at the military academy on Earth. His students learned strategy and tactics, but the most important lesson he taught was about restraint. Victory meant nothing if you became a monster in achieving it. Ambassador Laura served as humanity's voice in the Galactic Council for 20 more years. She built relationships with hundreds of species and helped establish trade agreements that benefited everyone. When she finally retired, the Council gave her a crystal pendant that contained light from 100 different stars. It was the highest honor they could offer a non-member species representative. And in quiet corners of Council space, old veterans of the war sometimes gathered to share drinks with their human counterparts. They would laugh about the old days and share stories of battles fought and friends lost. And eventually, always with a nervous look, they would ask the question that haunted them. Just how much of humanity's military strength had been revealed during the war? The humans would simply smile, that same unsettling smile that showed teeth designed for tearing flesh, and they would change the subject. Some questions were better left unanswered. The galaxy had learned its lesson, were to be treated with respect and caution. They were to be welcomed as friends and never provoked as enemies. Because somewhere in the depths of human space, ships waited in hidden bases. Weapons systems gathered dust in sealed vaults. Soldiers trained for wars that might never come. Humanity hoped for peace. They worked for peace. They taught their children that peace was the highest goal any civilization could achieve. But they never forgot what they were, and the galaxy never forgot either. That was why the protection protocols remained in force for 1,000 years. That was why no species ever attacked a human colony again. That was why the galaxy enforced a no-war policy on. Not to protect the, but to protect everyone else.